again, we'll go ahead on behalf of the Burke Board of County Commissioners. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order too.
Okay, and my board at this time, I would like to have a motion to approve the amendment. Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
And again, we'll go ahead and motion to approve the agenda as printed. Board of Commissioners. Thank you, Jack. Any discussion? There not being any, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Vote please, sign it passes 4-0. And I think Johnny's on the speaker. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to basically present to the county commission and give the folks in the audience a little background on this. We started an exhaustive effort. I say we primarily been our administration and their staff with most of all of the work on this, and they've made several presentations to this board. We've had a couple of community input meetings. Most recently, I think it was April the 6th or the 8th, I'm not sure which that date was. We had an information session here in this room, and I would like to thank the folks from the county who came out to hear that information along with us. As far as the options are concerned, the two that the administration brought to us and we as a board, I think, have reached by consensus that we want to approve are the ones that I want to present tonight to the Board of Commissioners. The reason we're doing it this way is because we feel like in the interest of time and the interest of good working collaboration and relationships that we don't want to go down the road to vote on something that you guys can't do. We don't know what you know, we can't look into your world and know exactly what you're willing or capable of doing. So this is just us getting together tonight to try to find some direction on one of the possibilities that we're going to bring up. The first option being, and I will say that after looking exhaustively at all of the other options, these are the two that we came up with. There was an option in the beginning to maybe convert Walter Johnson Middle School into an elementary school, but when you look, if you were here the other night and heard the information about feeder patterns and how that affects high schools and how it affects other things, and the fact that it really doesn't consider future growth, that option was, I think, pretty summarily dismissed. And so that leaves us with two options, one being a more immediate fix, but more of a short-term solution, and that would be the reopening of Mountain Crest Elementary School. Mountain View Elementary School, I'm sorry. The price tag on that would be about $2.6 million. It would incur a $500,000 to $600,000 annual recurring expense. And I will say, from what I understand, that you guys would have to basically come up with every bit of that money. There's no other revenue stream other than you to help us accomplish that. In doing so, what we would do is create a situation amongst our city schools where we would then have 3 elementary schools that are either at or near capacity. We started down this road to make sure that we prevented this issue of overcrowding from getting worse in the future. So creating a circumstance to where we're in a position where we're at or above capacity at 3 schools as opposed to 2. That comes with a price tag over the next few years of around $5 million. That's what we're asking you guys to decide tonight on that option, whether that's viable or feasible for you. Option number 2 would be to set on a path between our two boards to build a new elementary school. We have looked at and we've had court architectural out to look. The property that currently exists at Mountain View is viable to build a school that would house up to 800 students. Not saying that that's what it would be, but we could build a school that would house up to 800 students. That would have athletic facilities, baseball, football field. It would have an auditorium or theater, whichever one you want to call it, and it would have a full-size gymnasium. And it would be located back in the community where the school is currently sitting vacant. You guys can speak to the funding on that, but really that comes from capital funds that are set aside for building construction. As far as the school system is concerned, like the 1-cent sales tax and lottery funds, wouldn't require a tremendous investment from you guys from the onset to get started. But what that does do is it addresses our needs, I think, well into the future. And I think our board would all agree that that's the path that we would like to travel. But at this time, we would like to hear from the county commission.
Good, thank you, Randy. And I'll just open it up. I think Brian forwarded minutes of our meeting that we had with the school board, I believe, to everybody. And so I'll just open it up for questions from the county commission. If they have any questions or comments about this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, a couple of things comments I would like to make before the question. And one of the first ones is the book that was just laid on our table for us. This is the Economic Indicator newsletter. And this is prepared, of course, by Western Piedmont Community College. But on page 6, I believe. I think so. Can you hear me now? Thank you. But in that age group of 5 to 17, which is basically school-age children, it will decline by 1,617 students. And this is from year 2015 to 2035. 16 students, and I believe in most of these reports that I've got that y'all have been so kind to let us have a copy of, that most schools need to have somewhere around 450 to 600 students to be efficient. That if you don't have somewhere in that neighborhood, you can't have a lunchroom, because at $1 a piece, obviously your 600 students is a lot more money than 300 students. And in these studies, and one of them is Evergreen, one of them is I think one of them's Western Piedmont, and the other one's Coit. Am I saying that correctly? But one of the things that kind of stands out as you look at all three of those studies and try to study and get a grip on what's happening to our schools. And every one of those, one of the recommendations, high recommendations they make, is that we need to consolidate some schools, because we're running very expensive school system with anywhere from 200, 198 to 400 or 500 students. Now, I don't know how many is in the school that you say is overcrowded right now. I believe you said it was, no, it's Mountain City is the one you want to reopen. But
Mountain View.
Huh?
Mountain View.
Mountain View, yeah. But I think the question is, looking at the entire picture and just not one of your school districts, where do we go? What are we going? What's going to be recommended to us on that? Are there any expected changes? And if this is just going to fix one school district, is that really the way we need to go as a real fix for our school system? By the way, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad we got to meet with the smart son of the county anyhow. So, but that would be my question more than anything else. Is, you know, we have concerns. I think the concerns that I have is that we have a greater problem with too few students in schools than the one school that you have too many. And I guess my question is, and I'm sure you have, but somebody needs to ask the question, have you looked at redistricting? And have we looked at the total picture in a way that, 10 years from now, we will not be looking at one school district that's overcrowded and 8 or 10 you don't have enough to really run an efficient school system, or a school, excuse me.
You mind if I?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what we had invited you guys to the information session for on, it was either the 6th or the 8th. All of that is in terms of redistricting, look at feeder patterns, all of those things were addressed. And in terms of the COG study, if you look at the COG study, it does say that we're going to have an increase in the 25 to, I think, 35-year-olds through 2021, and those are the folks who, you know, that typically have children. The other part of the COG study that we looked at said that that we should at this point be 7 students less at Mountain Crest Elementary School than where we. Instead of being 7 less, we're 89 more students there. There's several things. Anytime you have a study, it's incumbent on us to not look at that study as an opportunity to plan for our demise, if you will. It's our opportunity, if the outcome of that study looks bleak, our responsibility as leaders in this community is to set about the process of making sure it doesn't happen, as opposed to planning for it to happen. I don't think anybody foresaw when that study was done at the COG 2 years ago that Case Farms would add 200 jobs. You know, there's several things that have changed the dynamics of where we are, especially in what I consider to be our critical area, which is our overcrowding in our city schools. We've got schools that really are just difficult to deal with right now in terms of our schools in the city. As far as the redistricting, we know that going forward, if we decide to build a school that has to build any school, redistricting is going to have to be a component of that. So we would address that at the appropriate time.
Any other comments or questions on from the Board of Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to follow up on what Mr. Taylor said. We've been talking about schools. Go back to 2005 when we had an issue with the schools then, especially high schools. But we have most of our elementary schools are in need of upgrading a better school. So my concern would be, why don't we plan for the future? In other words, district your county up into districts where the students live now, and focus on a number for each elementary school within that district. I don't know how many students you would probably put in there, 400 or 500 bill for. But if we do that, I think we would be better off than just focus on one district. In other words, a plan to do things that we need to do. And the next thing we need to do is how would we pay for that, and how long would it take to build those schools. So, and I think there's information out across the United States that, the state of North Carolina, that could give us that information, or at least a roadmap to what they experienced and how we might approach that. So it's going to cost money, and the numbers the chairman read off is pretty steep. So, but education is not cheap, and it shouldn't be cheap, because if we educate our kids right, we need the facilities and the schools that will provide it, and also the teachers that will teach those kids. So what mine might break it down is as simple as this: redistrict now, start a plan redistricting, and what those districts will look like on a piece of paper, and then say, where do we start from here? Instead of putting in $2 or $3 million in one room, one school, I think that's just a waste of money, really. And we need to focus on the whole 9 yards when we talk about schools. So I think we're just wasting time just talking about one school building or one district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jack. And I think both of you are saying what I'm thinking too, that a lot of our elementary schools are, I don't know, how old are they, Randy?
We have some that date back to 1927.
But I think, from the Blue Ribbon Education Committee years ago and whatever, I think that needs to be addressed long-term. I think you all do a great job of maintaining those schools, janitorial-wise, the upkeep on them, but we got to face it. We're running high utility costs in those old schools. It's taking a lot of money to hold them together, and like I say, you do a great job. But I think, again, that we got to think long-term. Some of those old schools, and we really need a long-term plan and try to address those needs. Some of our debt is going to come off now, or getting low on the high schools. We'll be down to, by the time if we build a new elementary school, we'll be down to 7 years, I believe, on our debt on the high schools. And right now, I believe we got 10 years left. So I think probably in your planning, it's what we really need to think of the future and think of the whole system. And like Jack and Maynard both say, I think we need to, long range. We really need some long range planning here.
And I tend to, I agree with that. I do.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Randy, one of the questions I wanted to ask, and you had made or referred to that if we updated and reopened the school, you're looking at $2.5 million. And all that would come from the county. But if you looked at a new school, and you mentioned a new school versus that, what part of that would be paid by other sources, whether it's from the school board or from grants, et cetera, et cetera? Is there a formula for that?
I think that Mr. Ives don't mind, he would be much better than suited to answer that question than I would. As far as funding sources for the new construction of the school.
It's the restricted resources such as sales tax that can only be spent for school capital or debt on school capital. So that's where all this money would come from.
So you're saying if we built a new school, it wouldn't come from general fund, it would come from the sales tax?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The two options that the school has just presented us is one, to reopen a closed school. There's going to be about a $2.5 million worth of capital expenditure to get it back up into condition to be used. And then there's $600,000 or so that would come from you and the board. And Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that's the option that the board would really want to see exercised by the school board. The option that you're discussing about building a new elementary, which will be a long-term solution that would be utilizing those capital funds that are dedicated for school construction, would be the answer. And you would be in a position, once that is completed, to possibly close some schools and put the children in a new school that's a better environment, and they're getting more bang for their buck. So what the school board would like to know is, of these two options, which one would the county be more likely to support, if you're able to even give an informal consensus to that kind of an answer. But the first option and the recurring cost and the capital is just a short-term solution, more or less. The other one is the longer-term, thought out, trying to address long-range problems as well as the immediate.
Thank you, Brian. And really, we can do this probably by consensus, but A is to support or oppose the reopening of Mountain Crest Elementary School, or B, to support or oppose the establishment of a new elementary school. Further, direct the county manager to work with the school superintendent to accomplish the preferred option.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like just to make a couple comments. I would certainly hate to see us sink $3 or $4 or $5 million in a 50-year-old abandoned, dilapidated building. Certainly, I think we need to look to the future. I think a new facility that would lend itself to 600, 700, whatever the number might be, would certainly make it possible to look at redistricting in such a way that some of the older schools could be looked at, see what could be done there, which is, of course, what Commissioner Taylor and Carol's talking about. And I agree, we do need to look at that long term, but right now we have a short term problem. And I would certainly hope that that wouldn't be sticking $5 million in an old building, when we could put that in a brand-new building and put our kids in a beautiful new facility that we could be proud of.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments from the Board of Commissioners? And I guess we're real, Maynard, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on your decision tonight, gentlemen, is, according to Paul, if we choose B, Paul, that money will come from the school board funds received from the special sales tax. Is that correct?
Yeah, with the combination, you have lottery funds, which are also earmarked, that has to be used for school capital, and the sales tax that has to be used for school capital and debt. So those would be the two sources you'd be looking at, is the combination of lottery and sales tax, President.
Are the high schools paid down enough that will accommodate that?
Well, as Mr. Abley mentioned, as Mr. Abley mentioned earlier, the
Won't you come to this microphone, Paul?
as Mr. Abley mentioned earlier, there's 10 years left on the current high school debt, which is approximately about $30 million right now. Again, we're talking about how much would be owed when the new school would be completed. So if it takes 3 years for completion, there would be 7 years left. But we could also, depending on the circumstances at the time, we can structure the debt to where the debt is lower while we have the duplicate debt, and then it gets higher after the old debt, if you want to call it that, gets paid off. So we have options to structure the debt to fit the budget that we've got at the time. So we do have some options in that regard.
Any grants on the horizon that would help you with the new school, or is anybody aware of that?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Okay. In our commitment, Mr. Chairman, this is Wayne, Mr. Chairman. If we choose B, we're given directive to the board. Does the school board have a preference in this matter?
I think in talking to my membership, we would like to look long term. I think we agree that making a several $1 million short-term investment in reopening an older school, there's several components that factor into that. The new school, if you look at the technology that's available, and walking through the existing Mountain View Elementary School, the servers are all gone. They've been repurposed and taken to other schools. So, one large expense there is technology, and then you're faced with the effort of trying to bring that old building up to be technologically advanced enough to offer the type of education that our kids are going to need 10 years, 20 years. If I think back over the past 20 years and how far technology has come, just in that time, I can't imagine where it's going to be 20 years from now. It's going to be, if someone had told me when I was 16 years old that I could carry something like this in my pocket that had more computing power than the lander that landed on the moon the first time, I would call him a liar. I just wouldn't have believed it. But I do think in the interest of moving forward, doing what's right for our kids in the future, and our job is to do just that. Our job, the day-to-day operations, and honestly, really the circumstances of the day-to-day crowding issues at school, those responsibilities fall on that of our administration. It's our job to look to the future and make sure that we prevent those kinds of things that we're dealing with today from happening again.
Good, thank you, Randy. Any other comments or questions on the Board of Commissioners?
One quick question. I would just ask the timetable, if you started now, what are we looking? And by the way, Mr. Chairman, what they would, in my opinion, of course, my thoughts are they would have to look at redistricting a little bit to accommodate the school, whether you open this one or built a new one, correct?
Correct. And again, our administration is working on, if you choose option B, they're working diligently to try to come up with alternative plans in the short term.
Mr. Chairman, we may ask Johnny, since he's on the phone, if he wants to make a comment.
Johnny, are you there?
Wayne, I'm here, but some of, I can't hear Randy much at all, so the only thing I would like to say, can you hear me okay?
We're here, we can hear you.
Okay, the only thing I would totally agree with what Jack is saying. I just, with the technology that needs to be available to the kids, I'd hate to see us sink millions of dollars into the Mountain View building. The town school is definitely looking at redistricting, if I heard everything correctly, which I support the fact that they're looking at redistricting, but I would hate to just sink a lot of money into that old building. So that would be my comments for right now.
Good, thank you, Johnny. Any other comments from the county commissioners, Jack?
The only other comment I'd like to make is, it boils down to a plan, and I'd like to see the number of elementary schools we have now, and their condition, and the capacity that they can hold, or how many students are in those schools at the present time, and the school board's recommendations on how we should start it on schools. What school needs to be done first, second, third, whatever day. In other words, layout plans is what we do. And also we need to look at our finances, and we can do that because we generally know how much sales tax revenue comes into the county each year, and we know how much we spend each year out of those funds. So we should make an educated guess, as to how that would look. But right now, I don't have the information to really make a decision on anything.
You think we could get consensus on item B, since the school board supports that, and that'll help them out to, at least they'll have a plan for the overcrowding of the Morgan schools, and we know they're going to have to do some redistricting or whatever, but that at least lets the public know that we're serious about a new elementary school. And I'm with you, Jack, long term is very important, I think, but I think what they're looking for tonight is to ease this crowding or come up with a plan to help with that. And we know it's going to take 3 years from today to build that new school by the time they secure land and everything else. And they'll have a lot of decisions, but I think we need to help them with either A or B. And as far as I'm concerned, I think consensus is fine, and I'm fine with that. I mean, if everybody else is, Maynard, Jack, how you feel, Jeff?
The only thing I would add to it, I think B is the best choice, but we don't know what tomorrow brings. If some shocking information appears and creates a twist or a turn, please keep us involved and notify us.
That's why we're here tonight. The main thing is we don't want to spring anything on you guys, because we're all in this together. I mean, it just boils down to the fact that we're all in it together.
Well, the past can provide a lot of information on what will happen in the future. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do have a study. I think Mr. Putnam can get you a copy of it. It's a study that's completed every 5 years by DVI. This past year, they just completed that study and looked at the maintenance needs of all of the facilities in the county. It's pretty shocking to see what some of the capital needs are going to be going forward. So we do have a road to travel, and it's going to be one that we're going to have to travel together. It's going to be especially difficult.
And we need to be serious about it too. I mean, not talk about it one day and seem like it goes
So
somewhere else.
Randy, I think we have consensus from the county commission on item B, and there's nothing else. I know your meeting starts, but unless there's some other comments as far as the county commission, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So
Real quickly, one thing I would like for you to do is go ahead and give the county commissioner direction to work with the superintendent to start us down this path.
And of course, that's
That's what
under
B
item
does.
B. That's under item B, that direct the county manager to work with the school superintendent to accomplish the preferred option.
All right, thank you.
So I think we have consensus there, and again, unless there's some other comment, motion to adjourn on the board of the county commissioners. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.